Hello and welcome to The Future Farmer in association with Carrs Billington, leading the industry through people, products and innovation. I'm Nick Wallis, and on each episode I'll be exploring an agricultural topic and discovering the technology that can help bring sustainable and profitable solutions to farming. From the science behind good silage to the efficient management of your milking systems. And here's a taster of what's to come. In this episode,
the consultants and the advisors say that all milk production systems can be profitable and all can make losses. So it's just emphasising the point, it's how good you are at the system you adopt is more important than what system you adopt.
Today it's all about managing milk production, and we'll be looking at saving costs, different calving systems, and learning about the age-old art of simplicity. To do so, I'm joined on the Future Farmer podcast by ruminant nutritionist Mark Holliday.
Hello, my name's Mark Holliday and I work for Carrs Billington in North Cumbria. I'm a ruminant nutritionist and I travel the farms advising on feeding cattle and sheep and doing grassland advice too.
I've been looking at some of the figures that you've supplied, and the margins on dairy production are so slight, they're terrifying. It's almost as if you wouldn't recommend anyone who wasn't already in the business to go into it. You're expecting a 1.1 penny per litre margin in England on milk in this year. Obviously, you do get the boost from the European support money, but that's going to run out soon. Where is the future of dairy farming when the margins are so tight like this?
I think the future is that there's a huge range in performance. That's just an average, but the range of performance across the industry is massive. The best dairy farmers are achieving a return on capital of over 20%. The worst are on minus 10%. So it's possible to do it. It's just how good you are is more important than sort of what you do.
Well, that obviously everyone wants to know that secret then. So what's your advice to finding yourself within a 20% return on investment?
The consultants and the advisors say that all milk production systems can be profitable and all can make losses. So it's just emphasising the point, it's how good you are at the system you adopt is more important than what system you adopt. Depending on the system you are, there's different things to focus on. If you are an all-year-round calving herd, the biggest difference between the best and the worst performers was the herd replacement rate. So if you had cows with good longevity and you needed fewer heifer replacements to come into the herd each year, and probably more stock you could sell off farm, that was one of the biggest drivers between the best and the worst. The next was power and machinery costs, which again is how complex do you need things to be? And then also unpaid labour costs, that's the labour that's the money that farmers pay themselves for family work. People often talk about feed being sort of the biggest cost in milk production. It is the biggest variable cost in milk production, but feed costs wasn't one of the top three differences between the best and the worst in an all-year-round calving system.
So it was the management of the actual herd then that was the most significant one that you found?
The management of the herd, yes.
Which is, of course, what requires the most experience, knowledge and expertise. So how can you help, as a representative of Carrs Billington, how can you help farmers improve their herd management?
I think we can help improve the efficiency of production considerably by analysis of soils and grass and the silage crops, to work out the optimum feed to go with that to produce the milk as efficiently as possible and at the least cost. There's a big focus from the environmental side on soil management at the side too. More rules and regulations on what we can and can't do in terms of fertiliser. There's big scope to improve the efficiency with which we use fertiliser and the efficiency with which we use farmyard manures. And that's for analysis and testing and finding out what you've got already and what the optimum inputs are to achieve the performance you're looking for at the minimum cost.
And what are the variables around that? Is that the type of herd you've got, the health of the herd, the location that you're in, the weather system, etc.?
it all needs taking into account, and the location and the weather system and the soils. That'll affect what milk production system you adopt as well. For example, on some of the very heavy soils around here, cold, wet land, late winters, the sort of the spring block calving system where you turn the cows out early and calve everything early on. It's very hard to make that work when you can't turn the cows out early enough to get the benefits, to get the full benefits of that system. So it's finding the right system and the right way of managing that system for the land and the climate and what's available on farm. Yes.
But given that huge disparity in the profitability of farms around the UK, some making 20%, some losing 10% a year, do you think it's possible to push everyone into positive returns? Do you think that by better management, better knowledge of what individual farmers are doing with their herds on their land could actually push everyone into a positive? Or are there some environmental factors or other factors that simply mean that if the price of milk is low, some farmers are always going to lose money?
In some systems, it depends how much money you need to invest to turn the system around. If you need a big change in system to make an improvement, you might have to make such a massive investment in buildings and machinery that it wouldn't be economic. It is possible to turn some round by better management, yes. Looking at costs, producing milk more efficiently, increasing yield where it's economic to do so.
I understand there are grants available nowadays to change the milking methods of herds into robotic milking platforms. Are you seeing that making any difference to the herds that you visit?
There is an increasing number looking at robots. The grants have certainly helped. It doesn't reduce the management skill. You still have to manage the cows exceptionally well. The cows still need watching and monitoring and checking that everything's okay, but it has made life easier and more efficient. On farms, some of the family farms, it's been a big help, because where you've got two members of the family that can use the robot or answer any alarm calls that go off, at least if one member of the family is off duty, it means they're off duty, and it does give you more scope for time away from the farm.
Mark, give me an understanding of the UK dairy market compared to other countries. How does it function in the good times and the bad, and what are the exports and imports element to it?
I suppose the biggest comparison would be between us and New Zealand. New Zealand produce way more milk than what they need domestically, so they're very reliant on exports to China. They're very vulnerable to fluctuations in the global milk price, but they have a very low-cost system too, so they're able to adapt to it. The climate's kinder than ours, so it lends itself more to cows being outside all the year round. UK, we export relatively little milk. Quite a high proportion, nearly 50% of what we produce is consumed as liquid milk, and you don't really export that, or very, very small amounts. Our imports and exports are more on processed products, higher value products, particularly such as cheeses and yogurts. And historically, we've always imported quite a lot from the continent. A big love of French cheeses and Italian cheeses, etc. But we are starting to export more cheese now from this country abroad. So we're less reliant on imports and exports, but it does have an impact too. Some of the milk we produce does go into skim milk, and some of that will be exported, and so the global market will have an impact. But the impact depends a lot on what milk contract the farmers are on.
Let's talk a little bit about the EU subsidies, because of course Britain's leaving the EU and those subsidies will start to be phased out. I understand there are new subsidies that will come in, but they're for slightly different things. Given that the price of milk is so precarious and making a profit is so dependent on those subsidies existing, explain what the next decade is going to look like for a dairy farmer.
As things stand at the moment, every farmer gets a basic payment, which is it's an EU system that we're continuing with for the next few years. So that every acre of land that you farm, you get a fixed payment every year. And you get that whether you're producing crops or milk or beef or sheep. But that guaranteed income is being reduced over the next decade. We're coming up with our own agricultural support system in the UK. and that's going to be different. We're going to have different systems within the UK because the Scottish government and the Welsh government will find their own version to replace the EU system. So that there's not going to be one rule that fits everybody.
I mean, one of the things that strikes me is we have an insatiable desire for cow's milk in this country, far higher than I've seen on the continent. When you go abroad, getting hold of fresh milk is it's there, but it's not there on the scale that we like to see it in our supermarkets. And we have an incredibly efficient industry. It seems bizarre that we can't get the pricing point right so that farmers aren't always struggling, given that there's this huge demand for fresh milk right on every UK farm's doorstep from everyone who lives here.
Yeah, UK production's been sort of fairly steady over the last 20 years. We've now reached the point where, Great Britain isn't self-sufficient, not quite, but the UK as a whole is now self-sufficient. Although consumption's been fairly steady, we have seen a slight decline. And I think we've kind of at that tipping point. So in some years where milk production's good, we do see the price coming back a bit. And it's just that 1% difference that can make the difference between a good price and particularly those on commodity milk contracts, seeing the price drop away very quickly. The population of the UK is increasing, but our consumption per head is slightly falling. I think that the trends are we're eating slightly less breakfast cereals than we were, not drinking quite as much tea. Certainly this year we saw a big difference in April where all coffee shops shut and no one was drinking their cafe lattes and milk consumption dropped away. And all of a sudden the milk price crashed, which caused and is still causing problems for many who are on commodity-based contracts.
It does seem extraordinary. I wonder whether milk has been a victim of its own success because everybody likes to get cow's milk. The supermarkets then have the leverage to use that as a loss leader in their stores, which drives the price down. I wonder if in the future, where cow's milk becomes a choice in the same way that you're seeing some of the non-dairy milks becoming more popular, there'll be an opportunity for farmers to raise their prices even if they're not increasing the volume. Or is that just wishful thinking because we're now in a high volume production industry and changing that will just end up costing far too much?
We are seeing a bit of that already. I think one of the biggest milk buyers in the country is Arla, which is a farmer cooperative that's based in not just Britain, but the whole of Northern Europe. I think Denmark's the headquarters. And they've been very clever at processing their own milk and adding a bit of value to it by producing sort of breakfast milks and milks with low lactose and filtered milks and adding a bit of value to the product and adding, being able to pay the farmers more than other processors are able to. Farmers on an Arla contract at the moment will still be getting paid 29 to 30 pence per litre, whereas those on processors who are selling into the commodity market are only on 22, 24 pence a litre, which is an absolutely massive difference.
I don't know why, but you just talking about value-added milk has just got me hankering after a pint of Jersey Gold. It's taken me back to my childhood. So to head towards rounding up then, you look at various different systems of running a dairy herd and you compare them and you look at the cost, the opportunity cost, the yield and what that ends up meaning for price per litre, pence per litre. Do you have any particular recommendations when you're advising farmers who are running their own dairy herd at the moment, or perhaps thinking about diversifying into that? What specialist skills would you bring along to this? And looking at the trends, doing your futurology, what would you be saying to them right now?
I think, as we said, looking at the costings earlier, is how you do it is more important than what you do. Many consultants have tried to push people two different ways, either towards at one extreme, you've had the New Zealand type grazing system where you block calve the cows in one go, you feed them very little concentrates, everything comes off grass. They're low cost, but the milk yields are low too. So they still suffer when the milk price is low. At the other extreme, you've got these American type systems where cows are housed full time, very high yields, but very high cost too. And these are especially vulnerable to drops in the milk price. looking at customers that I call on and some of the most successful ones, I wonder if there's a happy medium, a sweet spot that gives the optimum balance between the two. I can think of farmers who are getting 9,000 to 10,000 litres of milk per cow. A lot of milk, but they're still getting a lot of milk from forage. 3,000 to 4,000 litres of that is produced from grass and silage, not bought in concentrates. We're achieving good milk quality. There's good longevity in the herd, and we know that longevity and a low herd replacement rate is such an important factor in profitability. The concentrates they do feed are fed in the milking parlour or in an out-of-parlour feeder. Target fed, precision fed, no waste. So, high production, efficient production, good milk from forage, the cows graze outdoors, which is what a lot of the consumers want, and a good carbon footprint because they're producing a high amount of milk but producing it very efficiently. And maybe a system like that, which I call relative simplicity, it's not simple, but relative simplicity. I wonder if that's the new art of milking, and a system that's acceptable to consumers and to environmentalists as well as to producers.
Mark, thank you so much for talking to me. I do appreciate your extensive knowledge of your subjects, and it's been great to learn a lot about it.
Well, that's it. Thanks for listening to the Future Farmer podcast in association with Carrs Billington. For more information about some of the issues discussed in this episode, search for the Carrs Billington website. Once there, you can email with your inquiry, or if you have a question about feeds, machineries, agricultural and rural supplies, or fuels, there are Carrs Billington experts on the other end of the phone. Listen out for future episodes, and don't forget to like and subscribe so we know if we're answering all your questions. I'm Nick Wallis, and until next time, keep safe and keep farming.